the next session is about pulse management, and unfortunately Dr. Jason Brand can't be with us. However, just as importantly, we have James Manson, our Research and Extension Officer with Southern Farming Systems, to take his place and inform us on pulse management, the pulse management project. James completed his honours year in agricultural science at La Trobe University in 2017, but before joining Southern Farming Systems as a Research and Extension Officer, leading the SFS pulse validation and nitrogen fixation extension projects. The staggering thing about James is, of course, he, as part of his La Trobe University education, likes statistics. And I know there's two people in this room that have done statistics at La Trobe University, and he's the only one that likes it. So, and if anybody else has done stats at La Trobe Uni, put up your hand later on. So thank you, James. James has done fantastic work and has presented his knowledge, I know, locally at the R&D meetings really well, and I hope you can give him your complete attention. Thank you, James.
Yeah, good day everyone. This is my second results. Oh, this is nice. That will help. One moment. Is that working now? Whatever. This is my second results day, so it's good to be with you all. I've been with SFS for a year and a half and really enjoying it. I'm going to be presenting on the last few years of research that SFS has done on pulses, try to draw it together and paint a picture for how we might move forward with what we've already learned. I didn't look after these trials, so I better start with the acknowledgements, seeing as I'm presenting other people's work with other people's money. So thank you to these people and these funding bodies for funding this research. The reason I'm presenting is not because I like to steal the spotlight, but that has something to do with it, but because I'll be running the 2019 trials and pulses, and so this was a good way for me to get my head around what's already been done. It's going to break broken down into two parts, so I'll give you a little overview of that pulse validation project, what's happened in 2018, and how we'll use that to move forward in 2019. And then we'll drill down to the work that's been done on sowing date and the plant population work that's been done over a few years. So, starting with the pulse validation project of last year, we had trials in these 4 crop types. We had a range of fungicide, so what I'll do is just give you a quick snapshot. This is nothing in particular detail, we'll just tell you what's happened. In fava beans and field peas, we had some fungicide trials, not a huge disease year, so there weren't any differences in those treatments. We had a couple of variety trials for beans and peas. The bean trials you can find in your results books, so refer to that, I won't get into that. We had a field pea variety trial where we had a range of varieties planted on the 6th of May and the same varieties planted on the 25th of May. A really big yield difference between those sowing dates across all the varieties. An average 3 tonnes a hectare when planted at the beginning of May and half of that at the end of May. So we want to pick that apart and see what's going on there, but that was consistent across the 5 or 6 varieties we tested. So we'll keep that going in 2019. Part of this project is it's trying to push the boundaries a bit with pulses in growth areas like ours. Chickpeas and lentils are not typically grown around here, and that was sort of part of the project. The project was an opportunity to take the risk and try some different things so that other people don't have to. Lentils and chickpeas did alright. Lentils looked good. Chickpeas were a bit iffy this year. Both did much better at our Inverleigh site than our Lake Bolac site. Lake Bolac, our trial site here, is a lot windier, a lot colder than Inverleigh, and the soil's a bit rougher. So for both lentils and chickpeas, doing better at Inverleigh. But with the really late rainfall we had towards the beginning of harvest, the lentils lodged really badly. They all got bent over by that late rain. We had to prioritise the canola in our harvest operations at that time, so we couldn't get to it when we wanted to. So they lodged and that affected their performance in the end, so it'll be good to see how they do in a different year. And chickpeas seem to suffer from the cold a bit. They did grow, but they didn't end up putting out a whole lot of yield. We think they did particularly badly at Lake Bolac. We couldn't even justify harvesting them. We think it's the cold that's at play, so we'll just use that to transition in 2019 with the chickpeas. Chickpeas need an average day-night temperature of 12 degrees Celsius during flowering for them to put out flowers, 15 degrees Celsius. to put out flowers. And we wonder if that's just a bit not going to work for us. So there are these new chill-tolerant varieties that can put out flowers in an average day-night temperature of 12 degrees Celsius. So we're wondering, we're going to put them in some variety trials and see how that trait does for us. These are not commercial varieties yet, but we can at least test that trait and see if it's worth the breeding guys pursuing it a bit further. Lentils, we'll redo the variety trial and hopefully we won't have really late rain to stuff us up this year. Field peas will do more of the same, but we'll be focusing on fava beans this year. We had more of a spread in 2018 across the crop types. We'll be focusing on fava beans, it's what most people are growing, and we'll be looking at disease. We'll be keeping that seeding rate work going, and we'll be doing a big focus on inoculation, particularly on acid soils. Rhizobia are particularly sensitive to acid soils, and so we do want to explore how can we improve that, either by doubling inoculant rates or using acid-tolerant rhizobia. And we'll be sort of casting a sideward glance at Lisa's work in the soil acidity project to see what wine can do for pulses too. So that will keep us busy, and that was all. We'll all be building on last year's data, and we'll hopefully be able to present it together to you at a later date. Any questions about that, feel free to ask them at the end of the presentation, and I will feel free to direct them to someone who will have an answer for you. Which brings me to the sowing date for plant population trials that have been going 2015, 16, and 2018. At this point, as I was preparing for the presentation, I thought I would try to come up with a sort of a light-hearted illustration. I thought I'd be further down the track and you'd all be tired of listening to other people, but let me just have morning tea, so that was a waste of empathy. Anyway, I thought it'd be good to have a light-hearted illustration, and I was hoping to have something that would sort of introduce the topic well. Unfortunately, the only comparison I could come up with was the Black Death of the 14th century. You might have heard of it. Killed 1 out of 3 Europeans in the Middle Ages. Not exactly cheerful, unless you've seen that Monty Python movie. But it's a useful analogy because the exact same thing that's happening in fava bean crops is what was happening in the Black Death. Let me explain. It's not like the bubonic plague was some sort of super bug catching a ride on super fleas, riding around on super rats causing super death. It was just a contagious disease. What was different was that in Europe at the time there was an unprecedented level of urbanization. There were more people in one place than had ever been seen before, and there's nothing a disease loves more than dense populations. Doesn't matter if it's bubonic plague and medieval Europeans, or if it's fava beans and chocolate spot. And so the dense population is an issue. Oh, that's right, I had this little silly thing here. That took way longer than it should have to make. But I'm proud of it. In a world before antibiotics, across the world, historians will tell you that one of the ways that people sort of dealt with outbreaks of plague was you just got out of the city. You just depopulated as quickly as possible, because the longer you have lots of people all together, the more damage the disease can do. And that was true from Europe to Southeast Asia. It sort of applies to fava beans too. If you plant it earlier and you've got high population densities, you're just going to have more trouble with disease. And that raises a couple of questions. When do you sow? And for a given sowing date, what population should you be aiming for? There's obviously going to be a sweet spot, and that's what these trials are trying to address. So we'll start with the plant population factor. This is a trial that was done before that. If you look at your southern region grow notes for fava beans, they'll tell you to target about 30 plants per meter squared. That's taking lots of factors into account. That's 30 plants per meter squared. Doesn't matter about the row spacing. Jason Brand will tell you that you can change the row spacing a fair bit with fava beans and they'll compensate for yield, but obviously other questions about weed control and competition and that sort of thing. All our trials are on 20 centimeter row spacing, so just bear that in mind. If you have a look at this seeding rate trial, you can see one that we have sort of uneven germination. This was targeting, I think, 10, 20, 30, and 40 plants per meter squared, and we ended up higher than all of those, and not quite, 10, these ones were definitely closer together in the end. So it's good that we counted establishment and we can actually show we put more seeds out, but they didn't necessarily establish in the same way. This is the average of both Rana and Zara varieties because they weren't significantly different. And there was a yield increase from growing, this one's about 27 plants per metre squared, up to up here around 40 plants per metre squared. So that's a bit higher than the 30 plants recommended in the grow notes. And take note of the sowing date, this is about the 30th of April. Your grow notes probably won't say 30th of April, it might say 1st of May. And if you look at the text, it'll say something about one of our 2015 trials that showed maybe you could go earlier in the high rainfall zone, and that's referring to the next trial that I'll show. So that's interesting. Question is, why is that a bit different? The season could have had an impact, so this is the cumulative rainfall over that 2015 year at the trial site. You can see pretty, decile 5 for most of the season and then drying off in the spring. It was a low disease year. Rana did have more disease than Zara, but that could be part of why we got away with an earlier sowing date and a higher sowing rate. If you come across the Westmere, in the same year, we've got higher yields overall. Zara separates from Rana at the higher sowing rates. And we didn't have, I haven't shown you the stats here, but there was no significant difference between going at that around 30 to around 40 plants per metre squared, but 30 was better than, what have I got here? 30 was better than 20. 35 to 40 plants was the best performing in this trial year. Again, that's higher end of the sowing rate, and we're in the 3rd week of April now, 22nd of April. Again, lower disease year, and a bit drier than Hamilton. It got down to decile 2 in a couple of months there. So that's, again, interesting. These are seeding rate trials. So let's have a look at what happens when you look at the sowing date on it by itself. This is Westmere 2015 again. Overall, April, 22nd of April, did better than the 22nd of May. That was significant. Zara and Rana did about, this is Samira, yielded the same, and there was no interaction. So, 3rd week of April, doing better, or the 2nd half of April, doing better than the 2nd half of May. Before we move on to 2016, 2016 was a very wet year, so I actually want to skip it. We'll go to 2018, just last year, which was milder than 2015, but on the drier end, and then we'll come back to look at a wet year after that. Oops, sorry. So this is at Hamilton, again, sown on the 28th of April. Again, we've got a yield increase going from about 27 plants per metre squared up to 35 to 40 plants per metre squared. Just checking the right place. Samira and Zara, again, yielded the same. And interestingly, when you actually plot them out by the plants that have established, the lines are pretty much the same. So as long as you control for the actual number of plants that are out in your paddock, these beans are doing the same in our trials. A bit wet, a bit wetter in the winter and early spring, drying off in the summer. Did see some disease this year, but not a whole lot. Finally, like Bolak last year, we have a trial where we actually look at both sowing date and seeding rate together to check that interaction. You can see overall that April yielded better, 26th of April yielded better than the 17th of May. That's the earliest May date we have in our trials. And we had a yield increase from 21 plants to 35, and to 45 was better again. There was some disease this year. April had more disease than May. And the seeding rates, as you increased seeding rate, you had a bit more disease too. But again, not a whole lot because of that seasonal dynamic properly. So what I've shown you so far, drier years, you could be forgiven for thinking that there's not a whole lot new here. We have shown that on the earlier end of the sowing window and at the higher end of the sowing rates, we're getting yield increases, and they're a bit higher and a bit earlier than has been reported previously. There's a question. This is all talking about yield. There's a question with sowing rate. Obviously, planting beans in the first place is expensive. So if someone's saying that you should be planting at 30 plants per metre squared for yield, you might want to think about planting at 25 plants per metre squared for an economic gross margin point of view. So, still a bit on the earlier end and the higher end, so let's have a look what happens in a wet year. This is 2016, a very wet year, and we see that interaction that we'd expect. If you plant earlier, you have higher seeding rate. Blue line's April, third week of April, you're seeing that negative interaction. As higher seeding rates in that early season, you lose yield, and at a later sowing date, higher rates, you increase the yield. That's sort of what you'd expect. Samira and Zara did as well as each other that year, and obviously that's an interaction. But look where we're starting. Again, it was one of those years where we aimed lower and it ended up higher than we expected. We're starting at 30 plants per metre squared, which is the upper end of what's recommended. So these rates here, we're going 40, 50, even 60 plants per metre squared. We're still getting okay yields in that April sowing. It would have been nice to have something down at the 15, 20 area to have a comparison. That's just how it happened. And it would suggest that maybe there is something to us getting, if we could maybe push the earlier end and the higher seeding rates. Maybe. So put that all together. Oh, sorry, that's the seasonal year, so obviously very wet the whole way through. In our trials, these trials from 3 years, sowing in the second half of April was better than the second half of May. And the plant populations at the higher end of recommendations performed pretty well in these trial years. If you're skeptical, this might not convince you, and we do want to do more trials to fill out the data set a bit and to pick apart what's going on. But it might suggest that something's going on, and if it is, why might it be different to what's known? One possibility is the environment. A lot of the trials that you look at in all the research, some of it does come from the high rainfall zone, but the South Australian high rainfall zone, maybe there's something different in the Victorian high rainfall zone. And if you look at the varieties in the grow notes, very few of them have Samira and Zara in them. The most recent variety, from what I can tell, that's in most trials is Rana. So maybe there's something going on with these varieties. That was something I was thinking about the other day. I had a look at the Pulse Disease Guide. Rana, Samira, and Zara, they're all moderately susceptible for chocolate spot. And Samira is actually a little worse for ascochyta blight. So maybe it's a disease story, maybe not, I'm not sure. But currently they're rated the same. Or maybe it's just that these varieties just a better fit for our environment, and in a dry year, they just do better. So it's worth filling out the data set. This will make it a little more complicated. There's a new pathotype of ascochyta blight. It's become dominant in Victoria, and they differ in how resistant they are to that, so that's just going to add a little more complexity to the story moving forward. This is all in the Pulse Disease Guide 2019, published by AgVet, so you can look that up there. We just need more data to fill this out. This is all of the data put together. It's pretty noisy. I just chucked this in R because it's easier to play with. When you start to pull it apart, it can make a little more sense. If you look at April by itself, and you colour it by year and trial site, you can start to see what we were talking about before. 2015 in Hamilton, increasing, this is April sowing, increasing yield with rate. Same again in, what's that, squares? Westmere, 2015. 2018, similar story, and then that sort of messiness in 2016. So if we can keep filling out this data set, we should be able to paint a bigger picture. But overall, it's possible that this by itself suggests that we could be pushing those earlier dates and higher rates. Worth thinking about and talking to other people about it further. Thank you to the people who did the work with people's money. Thank you.
James, and you've just made one presenter's mistake, and that is you've now left heaps of times for questions. Questions, ladies and gentlemen. All you pulse grower winners. Both of you sitting side by side, you must have a question.
The problem with those higher seeding rates is actually physically fitting those beans down the seeding tubes on certain row spacing. There's only so much beans you can fit down the tubes. Yeah, it's just a comment, probably not a question.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't think anyone should be going up to that 60 plants per metre square sort of business.
So what were you using to get
I think last year was 170, and that's probably not targeting your 25 plants per square metre recommendation.
That is about 25?
No, I don't think it is.
Less or?
Less, a bit less.
Less.
And
Well, my quick calculation, Justin, is 100 kilos is only going to be, at 100% establishment,
yeah.
is only going to be 14 to 16 seat,
Yeah.
metre square.
So a lot of probably.
So how on earth do we get to 35, 40?
Yeah.
So our aquadolces were sown at roughly 20 plants per square metre, and sowing rate to achieve that was 150 kilos. And we used to be on 170 kilos, but we went up with beans flying out everywhere and not covered, so we wound it back to 150, and we've still got
Bees flying everywhere.
beans flying everywhere. But yeah, we're achieving about 20 plants per square
Yeah,
metre.
okay, that's good to know. So the trials moving forward, we'll probably make sure we have some of those lower rates in this to compare.
So in the trial site, the actual sowing of the beans was done by what machine? How did you do it?
Our trial, cedar.
That's a good point, Scott. We actually sow some of those beans down a fert tube as well, because we can't, for exactly the same reason, we can't do them all through, yeah.
And that's what we're getting towards, that you virtually had to put some down another tube in order to get to the numbers. And that's really where we all should be thinking about practically as to what we do to get what we need.
Yeah, Ben?
James, both of those years were sort of late germination years or late growth years. We just sort of got the big increase in plant density. It'd be good, and it's not practical, but if you get the dripper lines out and water up with real low rates all the way, start of April, end of May. Stewie Robinson's dominated with the broad beans this year as well. It'd be good to put that back into the bean trials as well, broadies with the favours. Yeah, just a comment, I reckon.
Sure.
You're right, it'd be great to water up lots of trials we do just to give us ourselves a constant as to whether that's practical or not. I suppose we just got to try that. Further questions? Thanks, James. Great.